one last thing I want to mention on that topic that I just remembered through your comment right now is that a lot of the vendors now, or at least many of the vendors that I know of for CDP, have priced their solutions based on functionality. So, for example, while you might be like, uh, may need only functionality 1 and 2 today, like journey, maybe you don't need journey orchestration today, and so you won't be charged for it.
Yeah.
So you'll be paying as a consumer or as a business who's a customer of the CDP solution. You'd be paying by the functionality that you need. Of
Sure.
course, there's a basic foundational cost for the basic features. Like, everybody's got to have, if you're going to have a CDP, you got to have this and this and that, as we mentioned, the profiles, the unified profiles, and the segmentation and the activation. So those are considered core functionality. And that's how software is licensed on, or I should say subscription. Now everything is a subscription. But then eventually, like maybe 2 years down the road, when my business grows and I decide, hey, I want to do journey orchestration. Well, then you activate that functionality and then you pay for it. But you pay for what you use. And so also that's another avenue that's kind of opened up and allowed people to really make the commitment to the right solid platform without having to pay for stuff that you don't use today, but also giving you the path forward to add this additional functionality without a lot of pain. And so you avoid also the cost of migration. And so you kind of make decisions today with the future in mind without having to pay for the future right now. That's how I kind of see it.
Get ready to deep dive into the world of digital transformation, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges shaking up industries. Join us as we decode the secrets behind successful digital strategies and hear from experts who are at the forefront of disrupting the status quo. In each episode, we'll unravel the mysteries of the digital realm and uncover the hidden opportunities that lie within. From artificial intelligence to blockchain, from automation to cybersecurity, we'll leave no digital stone unturned. But hold on tight, because this podcast isn't your average tech talk. We're injecting a hefty dose of wit and humor into every episode, making learning about digital transformation an absolute blast. So if you're ready to embrace the digital revolution with a smile on your face, tune in to the Digital Disruption Podcast and get ready to be entertained, informed, and inspired. Don't miss out on the fun. Subscribe now and join us on this wild digital journey.
Hello and good morning.
Hey Daoud, good evening to you. How are things in Cairo?
Oh, all good. How's everything in the US?
It's awesome. Billings
That's cool.
is finally...
I see you're wearing like a jacket.
Yeah, I got my sweater on finally. It's been in the mid 90s for like 2 months, and now it's finally rainy and cooling off. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. It's still hot here. Oh, rain. Okay. Well, there is nothing that could beat reading Shakespeare under the rain. And I would like to segue to today's episode by a very famous, very, very, very famous saying about customer data, which is to data or not to data. That is the question. And
I'm intrigued. What are we talking about today, Daoud?
Well, we're talking about customer data. And well, first of all, I think we should introduce our newly esteemed guest. We have a new guest on the podcast. So,
today we're joined by Faysal, our colleague. He comes from a very strong background in customer data platforms, most recently with Treasure Data. He's also worked with some large enterprise data warehouse tools, Snowflake. So we're happy to have him as a colleague, and we're thrilled to have you as a guest today, Faysal. So welcome. And why don't you give a brief intro on yourself?
All right. Thank you, guys. Hey, good day to you both. Yes, my name is Faysal Shaarani, and I have been recently working with the e-CENS team. It's really a pleasure to just embark on this effort. So pretty much my background is really all about the magic word that Daoud started with, which is data. And so I started my career on the foundational data aspect of technology, which has to do with databases and data warehouses eventually, and data lakes, and most recently CDPs. And so basically, I've been on the data warehousing side and operations. I've been in technical sales roles. I've worked at, as Patrick mentioned, I've worked at some of the big enterprise database vendors. I worked at Oracle in many different capacities of consulting and applications development and support. I've worked also at Snowflake and in the cloud database and the newer architecture of data warehousing and the architecture that they've leveraged, being a service, a data warehouse as a service in the cloud. I've worked most recently with treasure data, started with the data warehousing side and the big data platform. And then eventually when treasure data came up with their customer data platform, CDP, I basically just worked on the technical sales or pre-sales side, solution architecture, and kind of served in the capacity of pre-sales all the way to post-implementation and implementation for that matter. So that's really pretty much for my background as far as my experience over different companies and different roles.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, we're tickled to have you on the podcast today, and we look forward to having you back in future episodes as well. But Daoud, thanks for queuing that up so nicely in terms of what we're going to talk about today. Shakespeare's probably a great way to get into data, since there's both many tragic and comic aspects of data where marketing and commerce are concerned. So I appreciate that intro, but I want to kind of start maybe with a simple question for you, Faysal, and I guess it's both simple and crucial because of the amount of confusion in the marketplace currently. The whole MarTech landscape, we've kind of done it to ourselves. The way features and functionality bleed over from tool to tool or stack to stack. And so let's just start with, what is a customer data platform, or CDP? From standpoint, I guess, like, just if you had the elevator pitch definition, and then let's get into, like, what are some of the key capabilities that if a platform does not have that capability, it's not really a proper CDP?
Yeah, no, to your point, Patrick, there has been quite a bit of confusion most recently. So if you go back, like, a few years back, like maybe 5 years, 6 years or so, CDP was really a new term, was really a term that has not been coined. And it just came from the changes or the transformations in conducting business. And so a lot of times in the past, data resided in a big vault, and the only team members or side of the business that had access to it were, the IT teams, where they would go, okay, so the business would say, I need this information, I need that data, I need that analytics, I need this, I need that. And so the data would just then be extracted from that big vault that they had at the hands of, technically apt people, and then it would be handed to the business. And then if something needed to change or vary, is like, okay, well, can you do this again, but this time do this. So there's a lot of disconnect, so to speak, between the powerhouse, I call data a powerhouse of any business, and the actual people who conduct the business. And so from that standpoint, over the years, things started changing, and then you started seeing initially analytics be put in the hands of the business. So now they can take a look at reports and take a look at analysis without really having to resort to the technical folks, if you will. Then eventually came, okay, well, that's great. I can see the analysis, I can see things, but then in the digital age and in the online and e-commerce and online business, came the need is like, okay, well, that's great. I can see how my business is doing, but also I want to understand how I can steer that business, how I can conduct marketing campaigns, how I can personalize, how I can engage my customers, how I can gain their loyalty. And so from that standpoint, that's kind of like the second progression or growth in leveraging data. And so CDP came to be as, of course, customer data platform, came to really enable the business, the marketing / sales / business side to really collect and gather data that is in different transactional systems. And so, for example, you have your CRMs and you have your online websites, visitors, and you have the mobile app, and then you have the order entry system, and you have the shipment, and you have the support, and you have all these different points where customers engage with your business, and that data resides in separate systems across the board. And then so CDP's job is really, or customer data platform's job, is to really consolidate all that data into one place, and then form or create what is called a customer profile. Mm-hmm. And a customer profile, or a unified customer view, or customer profile, or there's many different names, but in the end, the entity is the profile or the identity of a customer and all of their interactions with your business, be it attributes or be it behavior. And that data resides in one file, in one profile. And so, for example, I can see, if I'm a retail business, I can see Patrick has ordered, these type of items over the last, quarter or month or year from me. His customer value or lifetime value to me as a business is he's ordered, in the tens of thousands or the thousands or $100,000, things like that. And so CDP gives marketers the capability to view the interaction points of a given customer, how they engage with my business, what's their value to my business, what's their behavior like, what do they like, what do they not like, and it allows a marketer to personalize to that customer profile, and then therefore be more efficient, more engaging to a customer, and therefore grow the business in a way that couldn't be possible before. And out of these profiles then comes like the next level, we can talk about that, talk about that later in details, which is the segmentation. Taking a bunch of profiles and saying these are a group of customers that act this way, behave the same way. Their lifetime value to me is a certain way. Their interest is this way. Their credit score is that way, and be able to really target or reach out to this segment or these different segments as a collection or in a collective. That's really what a CDP is. It's really more of a marketer's tool.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah, no, appreciate that. And in terms of, I guess, how can we dispel, some of the confusion, of some of the, what are other tools that you see in the marketplace right now that, are kind of either inching toward or incorporating and actually even messaging that they have some of this kind of CDP-like functionality? I guess, where do you see the overlap being, real and realistic? And where do you see sort of okay, we still need to differentiate between these platforms? And ultimately, a business needs to decide whether they want to invest in the tool or not. But if a CDP is the right tool, the CDP is the right tool, right?
Yeah, no, that's an important point, because as I said, as CDP started to emerge as an important, a few years back, as an important concept or idea for businesses to really start rallying around, a lot of businesses started to get this effect of me too. I offer CDP, and trying to kind of somewhat pivot from their original business. A lot of times, a lot of businesses we see they're in publishing, or they're in just straight digital marketing, serving ads and things like that, and email marketing tools and things like that. And so a lot of these businesses started saying, well, I'm a CDP in a way, or I can be a CDP, but really a CDP is beyond just the data consolidation, beyond the ability to reach out to customers and the points that we just talked about a moment ago. A true CDP is a CDP, or is a platform or a tool that allows you to really have certain functionalities. For example, personalization allows you to do personalization, allows you to do real-time personalization. Somebody is right there on your digital asset, whether it's a website or a mobile app. It allows you, a true CDP allows you to, or a powerful CDP, I should say, should have the functionality of allowing me to do real-time messaging to real-time offers. I see that this profile, of Patrick that is visiting my site right now. I know Patrick's from his profile, his interest and what he's, even also what he's searching for right now, and I can start presenting him and personalize my interaction with him, his interaction with my business on the website. So I can personalize. Not only that, but I also can activate. I have to, some CDPs, they have the activations. They tell you, we can activate to certain destinations like, Marketo or MailChimp or some of the other mailing tools, etc. But, how many can you activate to? Can you activate only to like 2 destinations, or can you activate to the plethora of destinations that are out there? I mean, there's so many marketing tools out there. And so we have to really, when we're evaluating as a business, if I'm evaluating a CDP tool to decide whether it's really going to serve my needs or really is a full-fledged CDP tool, I have to look at all these different factors. I mean, the discussion can go on and on, but again, just to kind of summarize, a true CDP, it really has to offer you a way to personalize, has to offer you a way to manage your data on the platform, a lot of data ingestion, data transformation. Of course, you can do that outside. A lot of CDPs tell you like, well, if you have a data warehouse or we don't have the capability to manage the data, clean the data, and do the transformation that's needed for marketers to work with it, but you could put it in a particular data warehouse or a particular tool that allows you to cleanse the data, prep the data, and then push it to our tool. Well, that's really, now you're dealing with different tools, different vendors. You have to do a lot of shuffling and shuttling, versus a true full end-to-end CDP has that capability, has the capability from starting to collect data from all the different transactional systems, whether it's CRM or support or whatever, bring it into the consolidated platform of that CDP tool, clean the data, prep the data, manage the data, and then be able to push it along to the next station, if you will, in the data processing tool of that CDP platform, where it just says, okay, now I have my profile. I can score those profiles. I can do AI. I can do machine learning. I can do predictive scoring. I can also do journey orchestration. I mean, all of those, journey orchestration, personalization, data management, a lot of those tools. And even I'll throw in the one last thing where I say you really have to be end-to-end complete when you're dealing with the data as a CDP platform to be called a complete CDP platform. Is also you have to have analytics at the end, because at the end, when I execute a campaign, I have to have the capability to bring back the results of my campaign to the platform, and I have to perform analysis on it so I can decide on my next campaign, this is what I need to tweak, this is what I need to change. So a lot of those functionalities sometimes they're either all there, and that would define a complete CDP, or a solution, or some of it is there, some of it is not there. Some of the CDP platforms like integrate with this vendor and that vendor and that vendor to serve those functionalities that are missing in that platform. So that's really what we have to look for when we're evaluating a CDP to decide if it's going to serve our needs or not. And it all depends on what the business is looking for. They might have a data warehouse sometimes. They might have brought all their data into one place. And at that point, they might have managed the data or cleansed it. And at that point, it's just a matter of pushing from the warehouse to the CDP. And maybe that functionality of managing the data or transforming the data in a CDP maybe it's not that critical to that type of a business. But, again, it varies, and you have to assess and look at all those different factors.
Sure. No, that's really helpful and comprehensive. Just because it's interesting, I shouldn't say just because, not only because it's interesting to me personally, but there seems to be a lot of trends that have some legs that are likely to, I guess, stick around, not just hype, but there's a big push around composability right now, and kind of moving from these big suites of products to more composable tech ecosystems or headless, right? And they're emerging like standards around mock and all of these things, right? Like, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but specifically in relation to CDP, like what differentiates, say, like a monolithic or a composed CDP from a composable CDP? What's the crucial difference there? And you kind of alluded to it in your last statement, where somebody might have a totally intact data warehouse or data lake, right? And they might be like layering something on top of that. So hopefully you can help us clarify that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of composable CDP as opposed to a full-fledged or a complete offering from a particular vendor for a CDP solution is really another trend that we're seeing, and that may be appropriate and that may be useful for certain businesses who, like I said earlier, like part of the functionality for a CDP is the data management and the data transformation and making sure that you're able to combine all of the data that you have from the different transactional systems in a format, or make it part of a profile in a format that is usable, very easily usable by a marketer who's a non-technical person most of the time. And of course, there are some marketers who are more technical than others, but really is to make it usable. So that particular functionality is, if it is, as I said earlier, if it is already provided by a tool such as a data warehouse or some other big data platform that allows you to do all those transformations and those changes and prepare the data pretty much to the way you want it and your business needs it, then all you would need is a front end on top of that, so that to make the marketer really be able to access that data. So at that point, a composable CDP, for example, would be just in the form of a nice user-friendly UI that can sit on top of that data warehouse or big data platform, whatever you want to call it, that has the data elements that I need. And those data elements have been prepared in a certain way such that they're easily accessible and usable by a marketer from that UI. So at that point, we're talking about a composable CDP where you don't have to have the data capability. You don't even have to have the storage within the platform. Your UI sits on top of your CDP UI sits on top of that platform, big data platform. Also, you add to that, okay, well, maybe a CDP platform does not have the capability to run analytics reports or dashboards. Well, you can use a third party also that you might have that use for your analytics, be it Tableau, Power BI, or many of the tools that are out there, and say, okay, well, my data is sitting in my big data platform or in my data warehouse, and then I'm going to use for my analytics that particular tool and do my analytics and create my dashboard, etc. So at that point, you're composing the functionality of a CDP through using the use of different technologies or different solution offerings, and then making your own CDP, so to speak. And last but not least, let's not forget about making your own CDP. I mean, it's where you're saying like, hey, look, I don't want to buy from anybody. I know what CDP functionality I need, and maybe my CDP solution that I build in-house is not going to be complete, but those are the functionalities I'm going to need, and those are the functionalities I'm going to build. But in the end, also, it's kind of going back to the old question, buy versus build. Do you have the best practices that are, that somebody who's dedicated for building a solution like that has? Do you have the staff and the capability, and does it really make financial sense over time to maintain that? Because the trends change, and you need to maintain that application that you build. And so there's a lot of things to consider, but that's really what kind of like what you have to think about when you're talking about something like composable CDP versus a full-fledged CDP that you just buy the solution and it's just flip the switch and it's ready to go. Of course, not that simple, but you got to prepare it and implement it. But it's really at that point you're a user and somebody else is doing all the maintenance and worrying about for the future functionality and the upgrades and things like that.
So if I was going to read it back to you in my non-CDP experts viewpoint, let me read this back to you. So if I wanted a composable CDP, and let's say I do have a sufficiently foundational like data warehouse that has the appropriate data inbound from like all of my data sources, right? The things that I sort of need to ensure are either handled by the composable like UI that I buy or that I build. I'm going to have to be able to accomplish profile unification for individual users, i.e. customers or potential customers that have given me first-party data. I'm going to have to be able to sort activation to all of my key customer engagement and marketing channels, right? So that means being compliant with their APIs, they're having the right sort of like data schemas, sending data in the right formats, the right tokens, keys, all that stuff, credentials. I'm going to have hopefully the two-way pipes to bring data from those platforms. Now those platforms are both a destination and a source, right?
That's right.
And ideally that should orchestrate with my other like tools in my own technology ecosystem as well, right? Like say my
That's right.
media buying platforms, my media measurement tools, and all of these things as well. So there's quite a bit to handle. And it's kind of the same thing.
Not only that, it's not a one-time set it and forget it.
Right.
It's a constantly changing thing because as you know, like for example, when you're working with a lot of different solutions and different sources and destinations, those vendors keep changing their API offering. And so if you set a connection to Salesforce, maybe eventually, eventually some things will change. And so your team will have to be on top of that and working with the vendors to make sure that these APIs that they've written for the integration, and bi-directional is not going to fail one day and all of a sudden, oops, Salesforce changed things or some other integration point changed. And so you don't have to worry about that with a solution that's really complete.
No, right. It's an interesting, and I think there's just like everything, there's strengths and weaknesses of each. But I think on the composable side, I do think, one, we've already seen the proliferation of these middleware vendors, right? And technologies like some of them that have been around for actually quite some time. But like, I think you're going to see an additional growth of these, like some very simple and some very sophisticated. So like, I mean, even things like, Zapier or Fivetran, right? They just manage all of your API connections, right? Because nobody wants to manage that stuff on the day-to-day, right? They'd rather, that's a case where buy it, don't build it, right? Like
that is true. That is true.
But similarly, I guess on the more cutting edge, and there's the kind of more the growth and proliferation of like streaming data. So using things like Apache Kafka, right, to now like pull data streams into nodes and then allow subscribing services to then pull that data, right? Like, so you can get really sophisticated with this as well, right? And I think you're just going to see a growth of all of that type, I call it kind of middleware or pipe, kind of almost like pipeware, it's like the plumbing.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is really true. I mean, your point is well taken, but like, I don't know, I'm of the camp of the less connection points you have or the less moving parts you have, the better in a data world, because the less points of failures you have. And so if we're going to deal with, again, there is a value to be said and assigned to composable CDPs. However, if I'm going to have to deal, I'll be the devil's advocate and present the flip side. If I'm going to have to pay for a Zapier and I have to worry about managing my relationship with the Zapier, and I have to worry about managing the, Fivetran or whatever, and I have to worry about managing my Snowflake database relationship, and I have to worry about managing this and managing that and managing my CDP platform. There's a lot to manage, and there's a lot of points of connections where things could go wrong. Not only that, but the effort and the cost is horrendous. So while I might think that, hey, I'm saving on my connectivity, by working directly with this vendor, and I'm saving on this with working with this vendor, but in the end, the total cost might be, and also the pain of managing all of that might not be really all that worth it. So each case has to be really evaluated. And that's, like what we used to do is we used to, do kind of like an assessment, if you will. And that's something that e-CENS also does as well. I mean, as we all know, is like, let me assess and figure out what's your situation, what's your environment like, and what CDP would be a better fit for you. Sometimes it may be a composable CDP, sometimes, depending on what functionality you're looking. But if you're looking at the complete gamut of functionality of journey orchestration, it's like, okay, fine, you integrate, but what about journey orchestration? How are you going to manage that? Okay, you're going to build it your own, or you're going to use a third-party vendor as well. There's a lot of journeys, software or platforms out there. So it really has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis to say, yes, composable would be better serving me in this case, or no, I think in the end you'd be better served with something end to end, even though the cost might be a little bit more, or might be like, it depends. Agreed. And it has to be evaluated. Yeah.
Agreed. No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you want the appropriate solution for a given customer and their business objectives, their business use cases, their existing technology ecosystem, their data infrastructure. I couldn't agree more. I think that's why you also see in some cases, right, like a partially featured customer engagement tool, with sort of 75% of the functionality, but in a suite, right? But at a lower price point, like that for a company that's 2 years old, that might be, maybe that's the right solution today. And then where you're still not building it, right? You still have this sort of end-to-end solution, but it covers, maybe it covers your paid social, your paid search, and your engagement channels, right? And that may be enough for now. That may be good enough for now.
But
you're right. There's that, the building cost, the opportunity cost of building and managing this sort of ecosystem of your own making. That is not a trivial matter by any means. Yeah.
Right. And one last thing I want to mention on that topic that I just remembered through your comment right now is that a lot of the vendors now, or at least many of the vendors that I know of for CDP, have priced their solutions based on functionality. So for example, while you might be like, may need only functionality 1 and 2 today, like journey, maybe you don't need journey orchestration today. And so you won't be charged for it. So you'll be paying as a consumer or as a business who's a customer of the CDP solution, you'd be paying by the functionality that you need. Of course, there's a basic foundational cost for the basic features. Like everybody's got to have, if you're going to have a CDP, you got to have this and this and that, as we mentioned, the profiles, the unified profiles, and the segmentation and the activation. So those are considered core functionality. And that's how software is licensed on, or I should say subscription. Now everything is a subscription. But then eventually, like maybe 2 years down the road, when my business grows and I decide, hey, I want to do journey orchestration. Well, then you activate that functionality and then you pay for it. But you pay for what you use. And so also that's another avenue that's kind of opened up and allowed people to really make the commitment to the right solid platform without having to pay for stuff that you don't use today, but also giving you the path forward to add this additional functionality without a lot of pain. And so you avoid also the cost of migration. And so you kind of make decisions today with the future in mind without having to pay for the future right now. That's how I kind of see it.
And that's, of course, I mean, that is the double-edged sword of the SaaS world, in the sense, like if you take it to the sort of Salesforce extreme, right? Like every feature is almost like a SKU, right? But it's right. But you're like, I mean, for a sufficiently large organization, that's a really useful budgeting and planning tool, right? You know exactly what it's going to cost you when you start adding in these different functionalities. It's very helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about maybe what a CDP is not, or maybe some of the things I think a CDP is not. Maybe it is. So I'm kind of, this will be a bit of an interesting learning for me, potentially. Can you do data enrichment in a CDP?
Yeah, data enrichment can be done through, like, a lot of the CDPs have third-party relationships with partners who basically would basically sell you third-party data. And so, again, to kind of go back and add to what a CDP is really leveraging your first party data. So whatever data you own, that's in there. So that's a CDP. Now, a third party data, a lot of the CDPs, the bigger CDPs have relationships with data vendors. And so you could buy like enrichment data and bring it in and integrate it with your first party data. And that gives you a lot more power for your unified customer views or your profiles to see, okay, well, not only do I know stuff as it pertains to the relationship of this profile to my business, but also I know something about what they've done outside. Like, for example, a lot of the use cases, and that's interesting in business, is that if somebody is shopping, let's say I'm an auto dealership or a car manufacturer, and somebody is shopping for cars on my website, I can, through third-party data, know a lot of information about that profile who's visiting my site. Even, they have not bought cars from me in the past, but I also see that they're visiting what other sites they might be visiting. I also see what their credit score might be like, even if I don't have credit score for them. Or I might see, some information about their social status. Are they a family person? Or do they have any kids? Are they single? Are they so I can determine, what kind of makes them tick, or how I can connect with them. So, for example, somebody who's, rugged, as a sports person, and maybe they're interested in four-wheel drives, or interested in more of the off-the-road vehicles type of thing. And so I'm able to really enrich my profile with information that I don't have access to from my first-party data, and allows me, therefore, to know more. And as they say, knowledge is power. So I can really influence the purchase. Maybe I can even close a sale faster. I can really attract them through certain offers that I know where they're looking elsewhere, they're not offering, just things of that sort. This could be a very, very powerful tool for CDP third-party data.
Yeah, and this is a case where, what you speaking from the paid media side, I think for a lot of years of experience on the paid media buying side and targeting audiences, third-party audience data. And this is a case of buyer beware, right? In terms of like the sources of your third-party data really do matter.
Yes.
For whatever use cases you're using it for. Like I read an article recently,
Important.
Ariel Garcia, like she did a search, of all of her online, first-party data, and half of it was just 100% wrong. They had her as a man, right? Yeah. They had her as being both, in some sources being like below the poverty line, some sources being, $250,000 a year income earner, right? Like, so you really do need to ensure when you're using third-party data sources that you're using reputable data providers.
Yeah, not all third-party data are created equal. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a very, very important point, because a lot of times you'd end up spending the money and really either not getting data that provides you value, and even worse, the data that provides you wrong information, or information that's not accurate. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important point. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
And then, of course, we've talked about this internally, Faysal, but like the regulatory, like depending what industry you're in, some of these things we're talking about, just because you can do them doesn't mean you should be doing them, right? Like, there's a creepy,
absolutely.
Like in healthcare, medical, pharmaceuticals, kind of like personalizing to people based on health conditions is one, like Google won't even allow you to do it. Yeah. Two, it's really creepy to be on a publisher website and then be, being shown an ad about like some health condition you have or something. It'd be kind of weird.
Yeah.
So, talk about, how about data partnerships, data collaboration, things we might think of like related to, say, identity resolution and data clean room type, in that side of the house. Do proper CDPs have any of that type of capability?
Yeah, identity resolution is one of the big features or important features to do or to be offered by a CDP. And exactly, just to provide an example for the listeners who may not have experienced that or worked with that before. Identity resolution, basically, by definition, is you're looking to make sure that the person that we're like a lot of times, let's just take a step backward. Profiles, like I might be in the system somewhere, or even in the same business. I might be, with an email, my email at Gmail. I might have an email with Yahoo. I might have an email, somewhere else, even my corporate email, my work email. And so I might exist. And then the reason for that, how does this happen? Well, I call one time, this business entity and I interact with them and I call because maybe something on my place of work. And so I give them my email, my work email. And then I call, as a consumer. And so I give them my consumer email. And sometimes I give support when I call for a technical issue or a support issue. I give them some other personal email because, I wanted to go, to that email. So there's a lot of different interaction points that would cause multiple personalities. I like to call it multiple personalities for the same person, basically. Yeah. And so to like, let's take, so if I call now, or if that business entity tries to reach me, they have now me at Gmail, me at Yahoo, me at e-CENS, me and, whatever. And so sometimes when they create these profiles, I have like 4 profiles for the same guy, for the same person. And so first of all, not only is this critical for a business, because now when they try to target me, one is from a cost perspective, they're paying for 4 outreach when I'm the same person. So they're wasting their marketing budget money. That's number one. Number two, when I reach all these different emails to, the same email to all these different email addresses, is like, why? What are they doing? Like, why are they sending me here and there and there and there? Don't they know I'm like the same guy? Obviously, they don't know much about me, or I'm not, they're not that close or personable or whatever. Yeah. So it kind of affects the consumer view or the profile they're going after view of the business. And then also it's the cost. So from that standpoint, going back to your question, is identity resolution or identification is really, really super critical from a cost perspective, and also from a so to speak, a trust and respect of the relationship between that consumer and the business. And so a lot of CDPs offer that as built-in functionality. So for example, you feed it like a bunch of profiles, and it is able to tell that, Faysal at Gmail is the same guy as Faysal at Yahoo, or is the same guy as FS at the e-CENS or whatever, So it's able to do that for you. Now, when we're talking about identity resolution, there's 2 parts to it. There's the deterministic identity resolution, and then there's the probabilistic or or the probabilistic identity resolution, which is the deterministic is based on, attributes like 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Obviously, this tells me with a degree of certainty of 100% that this is the same person. All these emails were the same guy. So I can I unify them all under one. And of course, there's logic on which email to use and all of that business. We're not going to get into that. but then it unifies that profile, and I can target. When I target Patrick, I send him one email, and I know that all these other Patrick emails really don't matter because I chose that one email for him, and I'm just going to go after him with that. Now, that's the deterministic. The probabilistic is where I really can't tell. I don't have enough information to determine that this is really Patrick and that is really Patrick. And so I'm going to make a guess, and I'm going to use more the probability or likelihood. And then I can decide as a business using that platform, using that CDP platform, capability, I can decide whether it's acceptable to me go with a 50% chance, 80% chance, 90% chance, or, whatever. So you can make errors on merging profiles depending on your comfort level. So those are this is the capability when it comes to ID unification or ID resolution and the different methods to approach it.
Perfect.
And the impact, basically, money and confidence in the business.
Yeah, no, sure. Those are important considerations. And what about integrating with, like, say, partners like, say, a LiveRamp or Mercury or Neustar, where you might be able to resolve identity for users where you don't have first-party data yet? Are we talking, these are now separate functionalities and we should really not be talking about that in relation to CDP, or is there integration that makes that useful as well?
No, there are tools that integrate with, like you mentioned, LiveRamp, some of the brand names, LiveRamp or some of the others, and where you push the profiles out to those vendors, and then they do the cleansing and the unification, then they push back the results back to you. Now, again, a lot of the vendors, since you're talking about that point, a lot of vendors have that functionality built in into the platform itself, meaning that the CDP provider developed that functionality in-house and made it part of the platform, or they don't have it and they integrate with this third party. So again, yes, it's an important functionality, unification, but it depends. And I would say if you have it built in and it's really good, and it produces accurate results, it doesn't really matter that much whether it's in the platform or not, but understand that there's maybe a little bit of effort when you have to shuttle things back and forth, if you're dealing with a third party.
One of the, I would say, speaking on the media buying side of things and activation, one of the big advantages of being able to integrate, say, with like a LiveRamp or like, say, Flash ID for flash talking is when you're getting into the activation side of media, and like, especially in the programmatic space of being able to, right, sometimes those third-party vendors like a LiveRamp, M1 or Flash Talk, whatever, their user graph is much bigger than your own. So they may be able to get you better reach in those media platforms than you can through your own activation. But
absolutely,
that's one consideration. Okay.
And that's an important point. Before you do that, just since you talked about that, you're right. Even though sometimes, the functionality is provided or native to the platform, the data that you have in your repository as a business, first party, or even if you have third party, it may not be as rich as the third party. And so there's something to be said about the third party accuracy because you have a bigger base that you're measuring against to unify. Yeah.
No, perfect. That's helpful. Okay, let's recap here real quick and then wrap this up this episode. Let's talk just real quick to recap. What are the use cases that a proper CDP unlocks in terms of customer analysis and then in terms of activation and engagement with those customers?
Analysis and like when you're talking about functionality within CDP, I mean, we talked about personalization. Analysis is just one aspect, but there's personalizations, there's ID unifications we just talked about, there's journey orchestrations, there's AI and machine learning nowadays, where you can score profiles, create models, predictive models, and score profiles for likelihood to buy, propensity to churn, and all those different things. And so there's a lot of these features, including analytics and other functionality that we've talked about already. So all these features are important in that. And the second part of your question was what again?
Sorry, so just to put a pin in what you just said, would we gloss all of those as some form of more or less sophisticated segmentation of your customers? What you just
I would say so. Okay. Because if you don't have those, the only thing you have on a profile is attribute and behaviors. Attributes is basically what describes you as a customer, and behaviors is what you've done. If you don't have predictive scoring, you don't have journey orchestration. We don't know anything about you. We don't know where you are in your journey. We don't know anything other than who you are and what you've done. And so your view is limited, and your segmentation is limited, and your targeting is limited. When you don't have all those additional features.
So then what are the key capabilities or use cases from a activation, so media activation or engagement channels?
The engagement channels, I would say we've seen a lot of in the use cases that activate to social media, that activate to like Instagram, Facebook, a lot of these ads, Google, that those are the main channels. Or sometimes depending on the business, sometimes most of the businesses, they activate through like email marketing tools, campaigns. Believe it or not, sometimes some of them these days they activate through like regular old US mail, so there's a lot of these channels that are, from an activation standpoint, and the use cases, if you're talking use cases, if we want to talk business use cases, I classify them that way. Whenever somebody says use cases, it's business use cases. We're talking about like maybe use cases for improving loyalty, customer loyalty, use cases for increasing revenue, or for new product introduction, or for cutting costs on marketing. Obviously, but through the unification, ID unifications, that's one aspect that we talked about. You would cut on the cost of marketing. Yep. So all of those are really typical use cases where maybe increasing sales, in certain regions or certain product lines and things like that. There's a lot. There's plenty of use cases, and we can talk about them depending on the industry. There's retail, there's B2B, there is the gaming and entertainment, and there's like all these different use cases that exist for CDP.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think speaking as a digital marketer, it's like anytime you can get people into the right mutually exclusive audiences, give them the right messaging, send them the right ad formats in the right channels. There's no reason I should be like sending broadcast messages to a really dedicated customer that I already have won, right? I should be sending them personalized messages in my engagement channels, get them out, suppress them from all the other media. Unless you have some good reason, like you're launching a new product line, you're launching a new brand, right? There's reasons why you might want to go back into that awareness and brand building, but nevertheless, right? You've acquired a user, now go generate loyalty and value from that user. So use the appropriate channels at the appropriate times. And I would say, based on our discussion today, a CDP is a really useful tool to allow brands to do that.
Yep. Absolutely. And I've seen results, believe me. Some really significant results and improvement in a business performance, like you would not believe. It's worth it.
We have an episode coming up, and you just tipped our hand here, which I love because we like to tease future episodes. We have an episode coming up about real business use cases for CDP and the end results.
Perfect. Sounds good.
It's coming soon.
Thank you so much for joining us, Faysal, and we look forward to having you back on the podcast very soon.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.